in its capital city, Brussels, where I was born, with my parents and my older sister. The Germans, under the Nazi regime of Adolf Hitler, were occupying Belgium. By an accident of fate, I had been born Jewish. Hitler had a passionate obsession to rid the world of Jews and Judaism. That meant deporting and killing Jewish children as well as adults to ensure that the world of tomorrow would not contain any Jews. Yet thankfully, here we all are. Miraculously, here I am. I'm a mother, a grandmother. How is it that I survived? Why didn't the ruthless and well-organized machine of the Gestapo find me? The answer is simply this. A family who cared enough, who was courageous enough to brave the risks of hiding a Jewish child, took me in as one of theirs and gave me the precious gift of life. This is how it all happened. On May the 10th, 1940, the Germans, under the regime of Adolf Hitler, goose-stepped into Belgium, bringing their murderous, destructive plans for the Jews. We continued to live as a family in our home, and I was growing up, learning to walk and talk, and behaving like any other naughty little toddler. The roundups of Jews in Belgium began in earnest in July 1942. The search for means of survival was on amongst the approximate 100,000 Jews living in Belgium. In January 1943, 2 convoys of 1,600 Jews were heading for the death camps. Amongst them, 287 children who were never to return. That same week, on a cold and bleak winter's day, my mother took me by the hand and took me to a house where she left me with people I did not know, who seemed kindly, yet my mother appeared sad and worried. I was 4 years old, she was 35. The fine 3-storied house stood in an elegant suburb of Brussels. It belonged to a Belgian Gentile couple in their 60s. He, Charles van den Borren, a freethinker, a professor of law and music whose passion was music. His wife, Madeleine, from an established, respected family, and whom we all called Nana. Their daughter, Marianne, lived in the house with her husband, Safford Cape, an American musicologist, who had come to Belgium to study music under Professor van den Borren, had fallen in love with the daughter, and had married her. When I came to them in January 1943, there were 3 children, grandchildren, living in the house. The older 2, Anne and Philippe, 14 and 12, and the younger one, Marie, whom we called Miquette, who was 3 and 3 months, just months younger than me. It was Nana, the matriarch of the family, who ran the household with love and with a firm hand. She treated me as another of her grandchildren. Indeed, I was supposed to be a distant little country cousin of hers, as she was the only dark-haired, dark-eyed member of the family, and I had a very distinctive Semitic colouring. I knew nothing but kindness in their home. The Van den Borrens refused money for looking after me. On occasion, my mother would bring an egg, some delicacy or other she'd been able to get, and this was always given to Miquette and to me, the youngest ones. I never knew hunger, although the older brother Philippe did, and as he told me much later, resented my presence, for it meant less food for him, a growing 12-year-old boy. In fact, he was hospitalized after the war due to malnutrition and remembers licking out the plates Miquette and I had eaten from. Miquette and I did everything together. We played, we had our baths, we warmed our feet under the oven. When the Easter bells tolled and dropped eggs and presents, so we believed, we ran out in the garden together and both found eggs, and I, a little pull-along bunny, especially for me. My mother would come perhaps weekly to visit me. However, she spent the hour talking to Nana, and I, peering at her from behind a door or sofa where I was hiding, trying to catch a word I could make sense of. I watched Nana holding and stroking my mother's hand and speaking to her in a reassuring voice. Later, my mother told me that Nana kept reassuring her that she and her loved ones would survive this catastrophe. I know that my mother drew much strength and hope from that time spent with Nana. I was to stay with the Van den Borens and family for almost 2 years, understanding little, but very aware that something very bad could happen to me and to my mother. I did on one occasion, conspiratorially, share the secret of my identity and name with a little Gentile playmate from the street. After all, I was only 4. I was only young. However, I could have been a great liability to my generous rescuers. To harbour Jews was punishable by death. On the 15th of May 1943, the Gestapo in Brussels warned that the illegal refuge of Jewish children in Aryan homes can no longer be tolerated. Ominous words, and yet the family took no notice. They were careful, didn't tell their neighbours. They kept the children from going to school, lest they spill the beans, and they continued to risk their safety and their lives, and kept me. Professor Van den Boren had apparently not hesitated when his daughter Marianne, active in the underground, the Résistance, had asked whether the family would take in a Jewish child. In 1997, I stood in the Holocaust Museum in Washington and surveyed the long list of righteous Gentiles. The Van den Boren name was, of course, not amongst them. I decided then and there that I had to look up the family and that they had to be given the honour they deserved and which I owed them. Philip and Miquette's reactions when I at last found them in Brussels that year, after not seeing them since 1960, were overwhelming. Not only did they remember me, but they told me there'd been much talk in the family after the war about having saved a Jewish child. That and the war had had an enormous impact on their lives. Miquette felt close and swore we would never say adieu to each other again. And we did. Both treated me as a long-lost sister. When I showed Philip the mandatory photo any grandmother carries around with her, a photo of me and my family, my husband, our 3 married children, and at the time 4 grandchildren. We were in Belgium at that time for the birth of another, Clara, who was just introduced me. When I showed him that photo, the tall, robust man with film star looks broke down in tears. Sobbing, he murmured, "When I see what has grown out of saving one child, I'm proud of what my grandparents and parents did." Jewish tradition indeed teaches us that to save one person is to save a whole world. I told him that I wanted to honour their memory and their courageous act. He replied very emotionally, "My grandparents and parents didn't do it for this reason, but it's a beautiful thing you're doing." Unfortunately, he did not live to see the title of Righteous Gentiles, Righteous Amongst the Nations, conferred on his grandparents at a moving ceremony in the Israeli consulate in Brussels in 2001. He died at the age of 67. Miquette and I have remained in touch ever since to the present day, spending time together both in Belgium and in Melbourne. It was during one of those visits that I found out that Professor Charles Van den Boren had refused to cooperate with the Nazi regime. Once Brussels was under German occupation, he had given up a prestigious position at the Conservatorium and had refused an invitation from the German authorities to take on a lecture tour of German universities. He pleaded ill health and his age as reasons for his refusal. He was then 67 and lived to the ripe old age of 91 in excellent health. This was his personal protest against the totalitarian regime which was abhorrent to him. I'm slow to judge people who didn't have the courage to do what the family van den Boren did. I often wonder whether I would have the courage in similar circumstances to risk my security and that of my family in order to help rescue persecuted people. It was my very good luck that such families do exist. Some people do exist. Some 3,500 to 4,000 children are estimated to have been saved in Belgium by righteous Gentiles, by many decent, humane families, by fine members of the Catholic clergy. When I last walked through the Garden of the Righteous amongst the nations at Yad Vashem in Jerusalem, I stopped in front of the names Charles and Madeleine van den Boren, mouthing them over and over again. I'm grateful that I have fulfilled our commandment, Zachor, remember. I have paid tribute to the righteous Gentiles who gave me life. I have honored them. I thank them for giving me the opportunity to know love and marriage, to experience the happiness and pride and responsibility, sometimes heartache, sometimes headache, of children, to savor the carefree joys, the naches of grandchildren. I have expressed admiration of them for having the courage to stand up against the destructive process of dehumanization and the use of terror. These people indeed reach the pinnacle of the human spirit, of which I am convinced we are all capable, even if it is a daunting and difficult task. One person can make a difference. May the example set by Charles and Madeleine van den Boren of blessed memory brighten our lives and inspire our humanity. Kovet zeer ondenk. May their memory be a blessing.
We place this candle in honor of the Van den Boren family who saved the life of our grandmother and her family during the war.
On behalf of Mount Scopus Memorial College, I would like to thank you, Mrs. Charak, for your inspiring and uplifting testimony. Your words will resonate within our school community for years to come. Thank you.